My daughter Claire pulls 12-hour shifts at the county hospital. She's got 4 little ones running around, all of them under the age of 10, and a husband who's on the road for work half of every month. A while back I dropped by her place on a Wednesday evening, completely unannounced, right after she'd finished one of those brutal shifts that would knock most grown adults flat on the couch until morning. I let myself in expecting the usual young family chaos, toys scattered wall to wall, dishes stacked halfway to the ceiling, that lived-in wreckage every parent knows too well. Instead, I walked into a kitchen with bare, gleaming counters, not one dish in the sink, floors so clean you could have eaten off them, and there sat Claire at the table with a cup of tea, calm as a Sunday morning. Now, I've been cleaning houses, my own and plenty of other folks, for the better part of 50 years. I've forgotten more cleaning tricks than most people ever pick up, but standing in that spotless kitchen, watching my worn-out daughter sip her tea without a worry in the world, I felt something I hadn't felt in ages. I felt floored, flat-out floored, because she'd cracked the one thing I never fully had. She wasn't putting in more hours. She wasn't scrubbing harder than the rest of us. She had a game plan. A system that kept her home spotless while she worked full-time and ran a family of 6. I'm John Marcus, and if we haven't crossed paths before, this is Seniors Cleaning Hacks, the corner of the internet where we prove that a tidy home has nothing to do with how young or how spry you are, and everything to do with how clever you set the whole thing up. If keeping your house clean while you hold down a job has ever felt like shoving a boulder uphill, do yourself a kindness and tap that subscribe button before we get rolling. What Claire showed me that evening reshaped the way I run my own home, and I've got a strong hunch it'll do the very same for you. Here's the first thing she said to me, and it turned my whole understanding on its head. She said, "Dad, I quit trying to clean my house. I built it so it stays clean by itself." I chewed on that for a second. Then it clicked. For years I'd treated cleaning like a marathon, a big, sweaty, all-at-once event you brace for on the weekend. She'd flipped it into maintenance, tiny, quiet moves woven straight into the ordinary flow of a day, so the mess never got the chance to pile into a mountain in the first place. That shift, from marathon to maintenance, is the ground everything else stands on. So let me walk you through the plays, one by one, the way she walked me through them. The first play, and the one she leans on hardest, she calls closing time. Every night, before she sits down for good, she gives the house a 15-minute reset. Not a deep clean, not scrubbing grout on her hands and knees at 9 at night. A reset. Cushions squared away, throw blankets folded, dishes loaded, and the machine started, counters wiped down, and every item that drifted out of place nudged back home. Think of it the way a shopkeeper closes up for the evening. The register gets counted, the floor gets swept, the shelves get straightened. Not because a customer is watching, but so the doors open clean the next morning. That's what a nightly reset does for a home. You wake up to order instead of yesterday's leftovers glaring at you before your coffee's even brewed. And here's the part that got me. The reason weekends feel so heavy is that we let 5 or 6 days of little messes stack up unattended, reset the house each night, and the weekend mountain simply never forms. 15 minutes, lights out, done. And if 15 feels like too much on a night when your legs are aching and your eyes won't stay open, cut it to 10, or even 5. The number on the clock matters far less than the fact that it happens every single evening without fail. Consistency is the whole engine. A short reset done nightly will beat a long one done when you get around to it every time, because the small mess you tackle tonight never gets the chance to marry the small mess from tomorrow and raise a family of its own. Which leads straight into something Claire said that made me laugh out loud, because it's so obvious once you hear it. She told me, "Half my cleaning gets done while I'm asleep." What she means is she puts her machines on the night shift. That dishwasher of yours doesn't punch out at 5 o'clock. Neither does your washing machine, and neither does one of those little robot vacuums scooting around the floor. So she loads the dishwasher during her closing time reset and runs it overnight, waking up to clean dishes ready to put away in 2 minutes flat. She sets a load of laundry the same way. And that robot vacuum, I'll be honest, I resisted those gadgets for years, thought they were a gimmick for lazy folks. I was dead wrong. She schedules hers to run in the small hours while the whole house sleeps. It slips under the couch, under the beds, across the rugs, into corners none of us would bother with on a tired Tuesday. She wakes to clean floors having lifted not one finger. Let your machines carry the load in the hours you're resting, and you reclaim the hours you're awake. Now, if these first tips are already sparking ideas for your own home, go ahead and give this video a like. It's a small thing, but it helps these hacks find other hardworking folks who need them. On to the next play, and this one is about removing every last speck of friction. Claire keeps her cleaning supplies where the messes actually happen, not corralled in one hall closet 3 rooms away. She's got a simple spray and a rag tucked in each bathroom, another under the kitchen sink, another by the entryway. The logic is airtight. The moment cleaning a splatter means a trek across the house to fetch a bottle, your brain quietly decides it can wait, and later is where mess is born. When the spray is right there at arm's length, the wipe-up happens on the spot in 10 seconds. She keeps it simple with the cleaner too. One all-purpose bottle handles nearly everything, a good squirt of dish soap, a splash of white vinegar, the rest water. Mix it up, pour it into a few spray bottles, and set one in every zone that tends to get grimy. No cabinet crammed with 15 specialty products you can't even reach without a step stool. That idea of catching mess the instant it appears brings me to a rule Claire swears by, and it might be the single most powerful habit on this whole list. She never walks through her house empty-handed. Every trip from one room to the next, she scans for something that belongs where she's headed and carries it along. Leaving the living room for the kitchen, the stray mug goes with her. Heading upstairs, the little pile at the bottom of the steps rides up in her arms. She calls it the one-touch habit. Handle a thing once and put it away, rather than shifting it from the couch to the chair to the counter and back over 3 days. Multiply that across a busy day, and you've quietly put away 3 dozen items without ever setting aside a block of cleaning time. The house tidies itself in your wake, one armful at a time. It costs you nothing but a glance and a decision, and it keeps clutter from ever gathering enough weight to become a chore. The beauty of it is that once it becomes second nature, you barely even notice you're doing it. Your hands just fall into the rhythm. Pick up, carry over, put away, the same way you don't think about locking the door on your way out. That's what makes it so gentle on those of us who don't have the knees or the stamina we had at 30. It never asks for a burst of energy. It only asks for a habit. Speaking of clutter, let's talk about the spot where most of it sneaks in, the front door. Claire showed me her entryway, and it was a small revelation. In most homes, the area by the door is where the day gets dumped. Shoes kicked off in a heap, keys tossed on the counter, mail piled up, bags dropped wherever they land. That single square of floor sets the tone for the whole house. So she guards it. A tray for keys and small odds and ends, a basket for the day's mail that gets sorted the second it comes in. Junk straight to recycling, the rest handled or filed, never left to breed into a paper avalanche. A rack for shoes so they're not tripping everyone in the hall, and a hook for every coat and bag. When the entry stays clear, the mess never gets a foothold to spread inward. Take care of that one-drop zone by the door, and you've plugged the leak where 3/4 of household clutter pours in. That same instinct, clearing the flat spots, carries into every room, and it's the next play Claire walked me through. She pointed out something I'd never quite put into words. A room reads as clean or messy, almost entirely by its flat surfaces. Countertops, coffee tables, dressers, the top of the dresser, the kitchen island. Your eye lands on those horizontal planes first, and if they're buried under a scatter of odds and ends, the whole room feels chaotic even when the floor is spotless. So she keeps her flat surfaces bare as a matter of habit. Not sterile, mind you. A plant, a framed photo, a bowl of fruit are welcome. But the junk mail, the loose change, the half-empty glasses, the random doodads that breed on a counter overnight, those get cleared as fast as they land. And she'll tell you the deeper truth behind it. Every object sitting out is a thing you have to clean around forever. Move it, dust under it, put it back, move it again next week. A clear surface takes a single swipe of a rag. A cluttered one takes 10 minutes of shuffling. Fewer things out means less to clean, less to dust, less to trip your eye up. When you find yourself fighting the same pile week after week, the honest fix isn't a fancier organizer. It's owning fewer of the things that make the pile. Clear the flat spots, give every item a real home to return to, and the whole room forgives you. Here's where I need you to lean in, because Claire said the thing that truly floored me, and it had nothing to do with a product or a gadget. She looked at me and said, "Dad, a clean house isn't one person's job. It's the whole household's job." For years I watched folks, good, loving folks, quietly resent the fact that they were the only one cleaning, while everyone else lived like guests in a hotel. Claire refuses to run her home that way. She sat the whole family down and divided the work out loud and fair. Her husband owns certain tasks, and those 4 kids, every one of them pitches in, right down to the littlest. People think a 4-year-old can't help, but a 4-year-old can carry napkins to the table, match up socks, and wipe a low cupboard door with a rag. Her older ones handle the dishwasher, feed the pets, take out the trash. She's careful too, not to dump everything on the oldest, just because the oldest does it fastest. The load gets spread evenly, and every child, boy or girl alike, learns the whole range of it. She's not just keeping a clean house. She's raising 4 adults who'll know how to run a home of their own someday. If you've fought this battle in your own family, I'd love to hear how you divide the chores under your roof. Drop a note down below whenever the mood strikes, because your idea might be exactly what another viewer's been searching for. Once the whole crew is pitching in, the next play is what keeps it all from turning to mush. Claire anchors her tasks to specific days, not a rigid, color-coded chart that rules her life, but a loose rhythm so no single job ever gets forgotten until it's a genuine emergency. Monday might be bathrooms, Tuesday a quick pass on the floors, Wednesday wiping down the kitchen properly, Thursday laundry sheets and towels. Each day carries one modest task, folded into the ordinary flow, so the weekend arrives with nothing hanging over it. What surprised me most wasn't the cleaning itself, it was the mental relief. When you know Tuesday is floor day, you're not walking around all week nagged by the low hum of, "I really ought to do the floors." Your mind lets it go, because it's already got a home on the calendar. That quiet in your head is worth as much as the clean floors themselves. Pick your own tasks, pick your own days, and let the week carry the weight instead of your Saturday. The last play is my personal favorite, because it turns dead moments into free cleaning. Claire calls it stealing the in-between minutes. All through the day, we've got these little pockets of nothing. The 2 minutes the coffee's brewing, the 90 seconds the microwave's humming, the stretch spent on hold with the pharmacy, the wait for a pot to come to a boil. Most of us fill those gaps scrolling a phone. She fills them cleaning. In the time the kettle heats, she wipes the counter down and empties the drying rack. On hold with a call, she's clearing the coffee table. Each of these jobs takes 60 seconds to 2 minutes, no more, and none of them costs her a scrap of dedicated time, because that time was already being burned waiting anyway. Stack up a dozen of those stolen minutes across a day, and you've done a solid half-hour of cleaning without ever once feeling like you sat down to clean. It's the closest thing to free work I've ever found. Before I wrap this up, I want to say one more thing, because I know how life actually goes. There will be weeks when the whole plan falls apart. Somebody gets sick, work runs long, a grandchild comes to visit, and the house looks like a small tornado paid a call. And in those weeks, the counters pile up and the floors go a few days too many. When that happened to me, I used to feel like a failure, like all my systems had crumbled to dust. Claire set me straight on that too. She said the plan isn't there to make you perfect, it's there to make the recovery quick. When a home does get away from her, she doesn't brace for a whole lost weekend. She grabs the family, sets a timer for 30 minutes, and everyone sprints. One person takes the kitchen, one takes the bathroom, the kids gather stray items and carry them home, and when that timer buzzes, they lay their tools down wherever they are. You'd be amazed how much 5 sets of hands knock out in half an hour of focused effort. A timer works a special magic on the mind. The ticking clock gives the job an edge and an end in sight, so it feels less like a bottomless chore and more like a quick, winnable dash. Then the house is reset, the maintenance habits pick back up, and the slip becomes a footnote instead of a catastrophe. Give yourself that grace. The system isn't about never falling behind, it's about how fast and how painlessly you climb back on track. So that's the game plan my daughter handed me over a cup of tea, the one that floored a man who thought he'd seen every cleaning trick under the sun. Reset the house each night at closing time. Put your machines to work on the night shift while you rest. Keep your supplies right where the messes happen. Never cross a room empty-handed. Guard that drop zone by the front door. Keep your flat surfaces clear, so every room reads calm. Share the load with everyone under your roof. Anchor your tasks to the days of the week. Steal the in-between minutes that are already slipping away. And when a rough week knocks it all sideways, gather your people and sprint it back with a timer. Not one of these asks you to give up your weekend. Not one asks you to scrub harder or longer. They ask you to be a touch smarter about the flow of an ordinary day, and that, it turns out, is the whole secret. If this was useful to you, the kindest thing you could do is pass it along to a friend who's drowning in the same weekend cleaning grind. We've all got someone who needs to hear it. Take good care of yourselves. Be gentle with your bodies while you work. Pour yourself a well-earned cup of tea like my Claire, and I'll be waiting for you over on the very next video, ready and waiting with more simple hacks to make this stage of life a whole lot lighter.